Creative Living, utilizing today's technology with the best of the past to bring you innovative ideas and up-to-date information for creative lifestyles in today's active world. With your host, Sheryl Borden.
Thanks so much for joining me today for Creative Living. We're going to learn about choosing new kitchen cabinets. We'll show how to make a peel and stick lampshade and demonstrate a technique called play yarn, which means crocheting with plastic bags. Do you know what room of the home is the most popular to renovate? Well, it's the kitchen, and one of my guests today is Andy Wells, and he's going to share tips for homeowners who are considering a kitchen remodel. Andy is with Master Brand Cabinets in Jasper, Indiana. Another guest is Michelle Muska, and she's with Simplicity Creative Group in Antioch, Tennessee. Michelle is going to show a quick and easy way to use peel and stick fabric to create a beautiful lampshade, and she has several samples she'll show us. And we'll start off the show with Nancy Lovett, and she's a sewing instructor who will demonstrate a technique called play yarn. And play yarn means crocheting with plastic bags, so it's a great idea for recycling leftover plastic bags in the house. Nancy lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Nancy, it's so nice to have you back, and when you come, you always have such interesting projects, and as I've told you, of course, you and I both love to sew, and I like knowing what's new.
Well, I brought with me today some crocheted tote bags that are made from shopping bags.
And what's the new term they're calling those?
I went online and I discovered they're calling it plarn.
Plarn.
Plastic yarn.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
On there, I learned to do this before it became popular, to recycle, and I've come to discover it's become very popular again.
Well, let's take a look, because if you didn't know, especially this one, I think, if you didn't know these were plastic grocery bags, I don't think you'd ever figure out. Now, the blue one, I think of the store immediately.
You might have figured that one out.
But it is amazing, and they're sturdy. They'll withstand anything, won't they?
They will, and they're wonderful if you're going to the beach, to the park, if you're going to the swimming pool. You can put your wetsuit, your wet towels in it.
It won't hurt.
The sand toys in it. You know, you get home, you put them out on the yard, you spray them off with the hose. They're wonderful.
That's perfect.
And they didn't cost you anything.
Well, that's right, and you're helping the environment.
Yes, at the same time.
And where did you get patterns, though? I mean, obviously, people need to know how to crochet, which we won't go into that today, but
it's just your basic crochet stitches, and I just go to my basic crochet books. They have leaflets at the craft stores. I went online. I think this one came from a free pattern from one of the crochet websites on there. And
so
you
lots of
crochet
things.
just like you would with a yarn.
And you've taught this, and you've had some of your students come up with some really, a little cap.
Yes, the Easter baskets, placemats, mud rugs.
Scrape your feet when you
Swipe your
come in.
feet on. It's absolutely amazing what people are doing. A friend of mine made this for me, and she actually even incorporated a little bit of regular yarn in with it.
Oh, I hadn't noticed that.
You know, the sky's the limit on what you do here.
Your imagination is at work here.
Yes.
Okay, I have a stash of these bags because I don't want to throw them away. I figure I'll use them for something, so this may be what I use them for.
So this is great fun. The key to this is cutting the bag so it comes off in one long strip.
Now, I've seen how we do that with fabric. One long continuous bias is what it's called.
And it works exactly the same way. So you take
the bag.
You take your shopping bag.
Any color, any store.
Yes, it's so much fun. On there, I start looking at my bags in a different way now.
I bet you do.
There. So when you take your bag, you're going to get the bottom and the handles off of that. And you can use your rotary cutter, or you can use your scissors, however, you know, when you're sitting and if you're watching TV and you just are going to cut up your bags. And then you want to decide how wide you want your strips to be. The blue bag is done with a large crochet hook, 2-inch strips.
Oh, now this one's very fine.
This one is a 1-inch strip with a smaller crochet hook. So you want to look at that and decide how big do I want my strips to be.
Can you get it too wide, too narrow?
I don't think so.
Okay.
This stuff is pretty indestructible, as you know. So you're going to take these, and let's just say we're going to cut this one into 2-inch strips. The key so I'm just going to go in and I'm going to cut my strips.
Now, you're not cutting it all the way across.
I'm not, and that's the key. You want to cut up to your folded edge, but not through your folded edge on there. So I have one already cut for us to look at, because this is the key part of all of this. Okay, so I've cut two, but not through that fold. Now I have cut number one, and I've put some numbers. This is 1, and this is 1, and this is 2, and this is 2 as you go across.
Now, let me ask this. I noticed on this one when you made that first cut, it came farther across. Does it matter as long as it just doesn't cut all the way through?
That's right. You can go within an inch or whatever you're feeling like. The key is don't cut one across to cut one on there. What you want to do here is you're going to cut one across to cut 2 to 3.
So it's just like doing with fabric. I never would have thought of that.
It's exactly the same here.
Otherwise, you'd have all these ends. You'd have a certain length of strips.
Well, think
and
how
it would
often
just
you'd. The bags aren't that large, so you'd have lots of itty bitty little pieces.
Well, hold it for you.
Of course.
Now, what do you do here? Just
okay, I just cut off
anywhere.
there, and at the bottom here on the one. Let's get that off there.
It's hard to tell where you start and stop, which is what you want.
Okay, and I'll let you pull.
Oh, it is just one.
And we have one long strip ready to crochet. And then I just take those.
Yeah, roll them up like yarn.
Ball, just like my yarn, and I set them aside, and then when I have enough to get going on a bag.
And how many bags, plastic bags, would it take to make, say, that purse tote in the front?
That one took about 20 bags.
And it looks to me like you could stack about 20 and cut them at once, couldn't you?
Pile them up and cut on there, because it doesn't have to be perfect.
No,
but it turns out just really fun, and they are fun to use and very durable.
They'll last forever.
Yes, yes, they will.
Well, Nancy, thank you so much. I think you showed me once about the continuous bias strips with fabric, so now I have another application for it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Michelle, thank you so much for coming. Every time you come, you bring something new and exciting for us to work on, and things that I didn't even think that Simplicity would be involved in.
Well, it's great to be back, Sheryl. Thank you. And I think one of the most exciting things about home decorating today is that you can infuse your own personal style into your home so easily. And that's what we're going to do today with these great little lampshades.
Well, let's just take a look at some of them. And you said these are made with scrapbooking paper.
Yes, that's made with a traditional 12 by 12-inch square scrapbooking paper and some great trims. And I like to mix the trims up. I love animal print, so I like to, you know, be an element of surprise. And this is just scrapbooking paper with some rickrack.
Everybody has rickrack that we can add to it. And this, of course, is my favorite.
I made that with you in mind, Sheryl.
Oh, I don't know why, but I love it. That's so cute. And this is the one you're going to show us how to make.
This is what we're going to do today.
Okay.
So first of all, we have a blank lampshade. This comes in many shapes and sizes. You can get them at your craft store or on our website, simplicity.com.
Oh,
And it's so easy to do.
And they're fairly inexpensive, so you could change with the seasons.
Right. And I just did that. I just did a chandelier over in my home. I was really excited. I took it down. I put it in a tree. I spray painted it and put leopard shades on it.
Oh, okay.
Lots of fun.
Good idea.
So basically, I take my template.
This is sticky.
Yes, it is. That's sticky. And I take the template and I lay it on top and pin it to my fabric.
And this is fabric in this case, but it could be paper or whatever.
Exactly. And I'll show you also how to do that on paper.
Okay.
One of the things I want you to think about when you're choosing your fabric or paper is the ambiance you want with your lighting. Is it in an office? Do you need bright light? Is it in a little bathroom? Is it just an accent light? So you might want to take your fabric or your paper and hold it up to the light and see how that shines through.
Oh, it may totally conceal the light, and that might or might not be the choice you want.
Exactly, and you don't want to be disappointed in the end. So if you do that,
that's
it's a little bit of
I hadn't
helpful
thought about
hint.
that.
So you just want to take and cut out your template. Now, if you're working with the larger lampshades, I would suggest you have a friend help you. Just because it's large and you have a lot of, you know, fabric to work with, so, you know, you might need a little bit of help. So we just lay this right on, and you just gently smooth all the way around. So you can see with a larger lampshade, it might be a little more difficult.
Oh, I see. Now, if you mess up, does that come off pretty easily?
With the fabric, the paper, it doesn't. So you really want to be careful with the paper, but the fabric, it comes right off. And then you would take your glue, and just run a little.
Just to seal it.
Yep, just your favorite craft glue, and seal it on right like that.
Well, that's easy enough.
And then you can trim it up a little bit with your scissors if you need to.
Because with the art shape,
you might have a little
uneven.
It might have a little bit of trimming to take care of there.
Okay.
And then you want to start with your trim. I mean, you could leave it right like this if you like, but then you can take some of
And
your flat
if anybody
braid.
sews, I have drawers full of this much rickrack or this much of some other trim because you never throw it away.
Right, and so this is what that's perfect for. So you want to start on the back. You can start either
seam?
underneath that seam or over it. And you're going to take a bead of glue again and just gently wrap that right around. And now, if you're not going to see the back, you could cut it off there, or you could snip your trim about 1 inch, glue the raw edge, and gives you a little bit more finished look like that. And then with the feathers.
And you can just buy these at the craft store or sewing store? Wow.
These are all by the yard trims, or you can use package trims. You can actually crochet some trim with yarn, or
make your own.
You make your own and put it around the top and the bottom. You could cut out a coordinating piece of fabric or paper, or do bias tape.
Oh, and this has a cord in the middle. That's what we would glue to?
It does. This is a little bit more difficult to glue than some of the other trims, but it's a lot of fun. So basically what I would do is run a bead of glue, and I would only do a few inches at a time. I think that would be helpful. And I just lay it and gently press, hold it a few minutes. But if you use a really good fabric craft glue, I think it goes pretty quickly.
Would the hot glue guns work on a project like this, or do they get too hot?
Oh, no, you could. And I would prefer to use a cool melt, because especially if you're using the paper
better on
and
the
with your
hands, too.
fingers. But your adhesives, your craft glues, especially for fabric, your all-around craft fabric glue, I think would work best. The other thing you can do is you can put some pins as you go along. And then before it's completely dry, you want to pull your pins out. Because if the pins dry in the glue, you might need your pliers. Yeah. So.
This one, of course, like I told you, I love this, but we wanted to show this. This is fabric as well.
It is. And this is actually silk and velveteen, a zebra.
I hadn't realized the velveteen.
And it has the template right on back, and I'm cutting that out. And I was thinking we could put this sweet little rose ombre trim around the edge. Like
and
that.
there are so many trims available in the fabric stores and craft stores anymore. So again, we could make them, or we can just buy them like that. But now show us how you do this on scrapbooking paper.
Well, you have
or
your
any other kind.
12 by 12 inch paper right here, and then you're going to take this, put it right on, and you would just draw the template with your pencil right around like that.
Okay.
And you're also going to notice that you might have a little bit.
It ran off.
Yeah, it ran off a little bit. But because you have an overlay right here, like this, you won't see that in the end.
So it doesn't matter. It's just about fit it.
Right.
And there's so many, I like to look at the scrapbooking papers every time I go to a craft store, and keeping in mind a lampshade even gives a new dimension to it.
And what's great about the scrapbooking paper, you don't even have to add trim if you don't want to, but there's so much available. And you can put monograms on them, you can put appliques on it if you'd like. There's lots of fun things in the scrapbooking department that you can choose. You can put buttons on them if you want, like maybe in your sewing room, you could add rickrack and buttons, or it's really endless.
So just make it fit.
Yeah.
And the good thing is you can make it fit for like in a nursery for a boy or a girl. You can really customize them.
I think I would use that for a boy.
I thought so too.
So,
in the nursery.
Right.
Well, thank you so much, Michelle.
You're so
These are going to be
welcome.
fun to try.
Great.
Andy, it's such a pleasure to have you here, and my goodness, you know more about cabinets than anything, and I'm amazed because you've been in this business a long time. How'd you get started?
Totally by accident. The original plan was to be in the Royal Navy, but that didn't work out. But thankfully it didn't, because now I've had the privilege of 30 years in the cabinet business.
And you work all over the country, all over the world.
Yeah, literally it is a global business now. It's become fashion. It's not just about one country anymore. It's about Europe, it's about Asia, South America. And one of my jobs and pleasures is to keep on trend by traveling and looking and researching to stay current.
Well, I know a lot of people are wanting to remodel their homes and instead of selling and having to start from scratch. But what room in the house, I assume it would be the kitchen, is that the room that's most remodeled?
It's number one. It's
is.
number one for many reasons. Traffic and use and development, really. The kitchen has developed from being a place where people prepare food to a place where hobbies are carried out, crafts are done. People meet there, parties are always in the kitchen, as we know. So it is the room that, if it's remodeled properly, long term, will generate some funds.
But you've got to also keep it from looking like, wow, this is a brand new room and the rest of my house is old.
Yeah, it's very important when remodeling to consider the rest of the house. It's very easy to isolate one room by poor color choice. So it's about storyboarding, it's about discussing the use of the room, it's about planning how people are going to interact with the room. So children coming in, grandparents coming in, the family eating together, somebody cooking, baking, what are they going to use it, where are the utensils going to be?
Well, it sounds like those might be some of the tips, but it would probably be a checkoff list that you or the designer or whomever would go through with the homeowner.
Yeah, absolutely, it's a checkoff list. I mean, it's okay to talk about price and budget, but the first thing that I would tell anybody is really understand the individual that's doing the remodel. What are they going to do? Who's going to be there? How are they going to interact with it? What is the home like? Where is the home? And what are the style preferences? What is the mood? There are a lot of questions on that checkoff list before you really start to design the room.
I've always joked and said I could have left off my living room and saved all of that room because nobody goes in there. They're always in the kitchen and the eating area. That's just where people live.
And it's true to say, and there have been articles in newspapers recently that say the kitchen has actually eaten the house because the kitchens are growing. Houses typically are becoming smaller, but the kitchens are getting bigger. People are doing more different things in there.
I know, as we talked about, you've traveled all over the world. How do you keep up with new fashion trends, which sounds kind of strange to talk about cabinetry and fashion, but how do you keep up with new trends?
The kitchen industry, or the kitchen and bath industry, has become fashion. And we keep up with it by many, many different methods. By me traveling, there are a team of people at our head office at Master Brand that travel too, and we study color palettes, we study fashion in clothing, we study automotive, we study all of the adjacencies in the rooms that we work. So in the kitchen, we're looking at the flooring, we're looking at tile, we're looking at countertops, we're looking at paints to make sure that when we're designing new finishes, we're not designing in isolation.
And I would assume it's something that's not going to be a trend this year, and then next year it's something that people don't even want. So it's got to live with the family for a while.
Absolutely it does. People are remodeling more frequently these days, but when we design a new finish or a color or a style, we try not to put a date stamp on it. We try to make sure that it will transcend a few years so that people have confidence when they're remodeling that what they put in is not going to be out of date in a year or two, which is a huge change in our industry. Colors used to come and go quite quickly. Now we're trying to make sure they have some life to them.
Oh, well, that's great. Well, what are some of the more popular trends that we might see in kitchen cabinetry?
Probably one of the biggest trends that you will see in color and finish is a movement towards very natural. We've spent many, many years putting great amounts of lacquer and stain on cabinet doors
to cover up everything.
To cover up everything. And now we're peeling back the onion, so to speak, to see nature's beauty. And the trend for us is to be really authentic with our new finishes and styles.
And you said every palette has a story. For instance, what would this story be about?
Now, this one right here is called Riverbed. It's a very simple story. It's a natural element. And we basically were discussing rocks that are in the bottom of a river. And if you take a very granular look at rocks in the riverbed, you will find exactly elements of this door right here.
Never thought
similarly,
about it.
you know, we do this with old barns, old barn siding. We always like to have an authentic story. Because the big movement with approaching the consumer is to be authentic with your story. Don't cover it up. Tell them the truth, and they'll come back to you and they'll refer you, is the most powerful thing you can get.
And I would think that if we're going with nature in our choices, that also extends the livelihood of that product.
Absolutely. Nature never goes out of date.
Right.
They tease me in our office because I came out with this line that my drama teacher gave me, that nature does not make mistakes with colour. And it's perfectly true on any given day, rainy, sunny, cloudy. But if you look at seasons, right, look at fall, look at summer, look at winter.
It's always there.
It's always composed perfectly.
What about, I've read a little bit about Art Deco. Now, I'm not familiar with that. How, is that something that is just a hot trend right now, or is it something that's lasting?
No, Art Deco has been with us since the 20s. It keeps getting recast. If you look at some of the very high-end hotels right now, they're remodeling old buildings from the 20s through the 40s with Art Deco style. And we're starting to see that in the finishes that we use.
But doesn't that go against the nature? How do you work that in with it?
It harmonizes with it very well, because in Art Deco we saw copper, brass, glass and opaques and chromes and stone and marble, like in the Empire State Building, a lot of brass and marble. Works very, very well with these natural colors that we've brought to show you.
Well, I just couldn't really see how those two went together as well. How about bringing like an old farmhouse into the 21st century, but keeping that beauty of the character of the old farmhouse?
It's not that difficult to do, as long as you respect the original elements of that barn, that farmhouse. A lot of the styling that we do today, we refer to it as transitional. So we don't say, oh, it's Louis XV, or it's a certain time point. What we do is try to develop styles in cabinet doors that work well with a period barn or a period house. But it's very, very important not to cover up all that authenticity.
Right. Yeah, a lot of people pay big money to get a house with character, and even though you need to update it and change out some of the things. You mentioned too that a lot of people are getting more color confidence. Is it just that they're learning more about it, or what?
But people are doing a lot more surprise coloring, we're calling it, or color blocking. For many, many years, color palettes were all about taupes and very staid, restrained colors, and people are getting more confident with their color taste. They're starting to have color blocks in the room that add a bit of temperature. You mentioned a barn or a farmhouse. If we have old beams in there that are somewhat gray or sanded, it's nice to put a nice blue in there or a nice green, just to add some temperature to the room.
So they can still go with what's in there, but just add to it, and that really updates it immensely.
Yeah, color is the best tool that you can use to update anything, as long as you respect the original.
And inexpensive for the most part.
Very inexpensive way of making old new and old fashionable again.
And you were saying too, talking about the old standbys, the cherry, but that I thought it was interesting when you and I were talking earlier that walnut's coming back.
Absolutely,
That's amazing.
Walnut's been around us forever.
But it kind of went out of vogue. It wasn't really seen.
And it's back. We recently were designing some photographic sets for one of our brands, and we used very high gloss white, and we used walnut with it. And it was a Manhattan apartment, but walnut is coming back in droves. It's like wood doors are now made in walnut. Walnut's been used in veneers. Walnut's been used in laminates, so it's very fashionable again.
I can see why you've stayed with this so long. It is really interesting. To me, it was a piece of wood you put on the front of a cabinet. But it really, like you say, each piece has its own story.
It does, and it really resonates when we talk to consumers. Their eyes get wide when you talk about, oh, this is where the story comes from.
Well, I wish we could talk to you longer, because this really is so interesting and so new, I think, for many of us. But thank you so much, Andy. I appreciate you being here today.
You're very welcome.
I hope you enjoyed the show today. Next time on Creative Living, we'll learn how to cook and eat gluten-free foods, and we'll demonstrate a technique for quilting called playing in the grid. One of my next guests is the founder of an online resource for gluten-free cooking. She'll discuss the benefits of a gluten-free diet and demonstrate how to prepare easy and delicious gluten-free meals. She even has a monthly foodie box club she'll tell about. A quilter and designer will also be with us on the next show, and she's going to demonstrate what she calls playing in the grid. She'll show how to use a paint stick primer on the background fabric and then use the grid as a guide for your quilted creation. This really makes beautiful fabric. Both of these topics will be featured on the next Creative Living show. If you ever have comments or suggestions or ideas for shows, you can email me at cheryl.borden@enmu.edu. I'd also like to ask you to become a fan of Creative Living on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com and in the search window type in Creative Living with Sheryl Borden. Thanks so much. I hope you'll plan to join me next time for Creative Living.
We're very pleased to offer a new booklet that accompanies this series of Creative Living. This booklet is titled the 6800 Series, and it features a wonderful collection of ideas and information. And it's available free of charge on our website. Posted as a PDF file, you can simply download the entire booklet or just the segments you're most interested in. For your copy of this new booklet, go to our website at KENW.org and then click on Creative Living. Scroll down to the booklet section and you can click on the booklet or on any of the other booklets we have available online. We'd also like to invite you to sign up for our free e-newsletter. Just go to KENW.org and click on the Sign Up Now button and input your email address. Thank you.